Shalom, shalom. Gotta fix something. Salaki. Well, one of you guys can hear. Okay. Oh, snap. So, shalom, shalom. I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Shem Yahushai, by Shemar Kakadash, Brakati Yahweh, Brakati Yahushai. Double honors to the elder apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well through the Spirit. And a mighty shalom to the hopeful elect in the same spirit, Lord willing that they all continue in sound doctrine and in the same spirit. Shalom to the Akwath, the sisters of this faith. Lord willing, you continue to pursue your lot, which is being a loving and silent and virtuous wife. And Lord willing, Yahweh Shemon Shai has mercy on the other brothers and sisters that's not in the faith. The title of this lesson is a part 2 to another live I did yesterday before doing Unity Camp with the GMS, Buffalo GMS Niagara Falls camp. I gotta relook. The title might be different. Yeah, this is basically the same thing, but in order to believe, you must be taught. In order to teach, you must learn. And this is something that's on my mind, so I gotta get it out. I got to get it out. Lowell, and this is edifying, and we hit the main points, right? Because in order for you to believe, you must be taught, right? In order to teach, you must learn. You have to be a student in this thing. So faith and understanding come through being taught the truth. No one can teach unless they have first been a humble student under the spirit of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Just like Paul, like what Paul said. What did I want to go to first? I think I want to go to Hebrews 5:12 first. Lord willing, this lesson will be a little short. My computer definitely acting a little funny, so it's gonna have a little lag, but we're gonna deal with what we got. So this Hebrews 5:12, it says, For the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of the Most High, and are become such as have need of milk and not of strong meat. So it's very important to be taught again, and this is another thing with a lot of people that's in Christianity, especially to even understand what we teach Hebrew Israelites. you have to be taught it, or you have to seek or have a desire to actually truly understand the doctrine that is actually being taught by the men of the Lord, right? And it don't come by um, accusing or coming with your own thought or your own opinion. You know, you want to search, investigate the matter, right? Especially before you rebuke what somebody is bringing out, which you might not have understood. You might not even have understanding on, right? So let's go to the verses that I brought out yesterday real quick. Romans, the 10th chapter, in verse 14. And we're going to read it in the NLT real quick. 14 to 17 in the NLT. It says, but how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? Right? For any man or any woman, in order for you to believe, this doctrine and actually believe in Yahweh Shem Yahushai, you have to be taught, right? And it's just like in school. In order to pass a certain class, you must be taught. Salaki was one of the Akim. So you have to be taught. Verse 15. And this is another reason why, if you are watching videos or you watching somebody bring it out, especially children or you women, listening to the men of the Lord or listening to your husband, for you in faith, if you say you believe, as a student or a believer, you're going to always most likely be where the word is being brought. Now, yes, we always say the ministry is really for the men, right? But you women are Israelites too. So when you have examples in the scriptures like the Martha and Mary stood and learned the scriptures or the gospel at the feet of Yahushua, right? So for yourself, regardless if you're busy or if you are busy, find time to get back that learning, right? Because yes, you pray, you meditate on the Lord, but if you're not constantly feeding your temple things that pertain to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, how can you meditate on those things, right? So verse 15, and how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring good news. But not everyone welcomes the good news. For Isaiah the prophet said, Yahweh, who has believed our message? So faith comes from hearing. That is hearing the good news about Hamashiach. So this is how we increase our faith, right? You have to be a student, be willing to hear in order to actually become a believer. You don't just wake up, oh, I believe in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, and nobody ever taught you, let alone from that divine selection, the Lord is calling you to this faith. He's calling you to this ministry. He's moving you in the spirit, in the sense of searching the scriptures or looking for the men of the Lord. Is not you. The Lord is doing that, because just like what Paul said in 1 Timothy 1:12, right? That Yahushua enabled him because he found him faithful. How can he find him faithful? Jeremiah 17:10. The Lord is searching the heart. So if you come in this faith, it's because the Most High see that you are a faithful vessel, So you want to learn as much as you can, right? So when we look at this Romans chapter 10, verse 14 to 17, this shows faith. Belief begins with hearing the true doctrine, not man's opinion. Yahweh set up men to teach the truth so others may believe, right? This is why, when we look at Amos 3 and 6, most of the thing is just not all good and dandy. You're going to hear about war. You're going to hear about death. You're going to hear about being forsaken, being removed, being cut off. You're going to hear about bad rulers. You're going to hear about other nations. And then you're going to hear about salvation. You're going to hear about prophecies. It's multiple things. But what is it? Amos 3:6. Shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people be not afraid? Shall there be evil in the city, and Yahweh have not done it? So for the collapse or the separation of the kingdom of Israel, the southern and northern kingdom becoming two kingdoms, right? The prophets had to forewarn the people, which is blowing a trumpet, right? Jeremiah, Isaiah, all the prophets was telling them on what was going to happen, just like Moses in Deuteronomy 28. If we turn from the Lord, right, just by being consumed by the nations around us, Judges the 3rd chapter, the Lord left certain nations in that land to prove us. But because what was prophesied, if we forsake or turn from the Lord, these things, these curses, these consequences will fall on us. Guess what? We're in those consequences because the Lord knew our heart that we were going to fall away from him, because being in this chain of darkness. This what goes into being a student by learning, right? Let's go to Ecclesiastes, the 12th chapter, in verse 13, which this is a basic classic scripture that you should always have in your arsenal. So Ecclesiastes 12 and 13, let us hear the whole conclusion of the matter. Multiple topics, okay, salvation, reincarnation, regeneration, which goes into multiple points. But let's say, for instance, you want the breakdown that Yahushua was Solomon and Adam. Now you might not have, oh, hey, I was Solomon, I was Adam, straight direct. But through precepts and understanding prophecies and understanding metaphors or things that are symbolic to Yahushua in his role, you can kind of see it. Just like when you look at when Heavenly Father said a good tree cannot bear fruit or bring forth evil fruit or corrupt fruit, and a corrupt tree can't bring forth good fruit. So just like symbolically, that is, he's speaking about men, right? Because you got false teachers that are corrupt and they bring in corrupt fruit. And then you have good prophets that bring forth good fruit. A good prophet cannot produce corrupt fruit, which is other believers. So him symbolically speaking about men as trees, you know, you got to get these understandings to grow in faith, to know this is what this means. Oh, that's what he means. Oh, this is what this is. You have to grow in your faith by hearing brothers give the sense of the whole conclusion of that matter. Fear the Most High, right, which is a reverence, or to be terrified, and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. So this is the duties that we have to take in, let alone what is it, 2 Timothy 2:15, study to show thyself approved as a workman that rightly divide the word of truth. Study is another form of investigating, right? So for you to be a believer, you have to be like the people of Berea, have a readiness mind to hear what somebody is saying, which is what a real sheep of the Lord wants to be in the know. Why this? Why did this happen? What's going on? Real sheep want to know. Okay. Now let's go to Proverbs 1:5. Proverbs 1:5. A wise man will hear and will increase in learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsel. So before you teach, you must hear. That's the process of learning from those before, right? Let alone even in this side, say if this truth, that spirit of truth wasn't here, what do you think the Lord would do? He will raise up a prophet, mold him, give him the spirit to be able to understand. That goes back to what Yahushua said in St. John 14:26. You have to believe that the Ruach HaKodesh can go into a brother and have him have a desire to search truth. Might make mistakes on the way, but that comes with studying. You know how many scientists and teachers messed up when they research and then had to double up to sharpen it to make it even better? So when you look at St. John 14:26, but the Comforter, which is the Ruach HaKodesh, whom the Father will send in my name, he shall teach you all things and bring all things to your remembrance, whatsoever I have said unto you. So in this side, the time we are now, the Lord is working with us different. For us to learn, the Ruach HaKodesh has to be in a brother, be in a teacher, be in a prophet, apostle, evangelist, a pastor, a bishop that is teaching his word, or moved or faithful right? In the inward man, the Lord is going to mold him and build him up so that he'll be able to run with the correct message. When you look at Habakkuk chapter 2, I believe verse 2 in the NLT, right? That person is leaving with the correct message. All this, everything in the scriptures is a correct message, but it has to be dissected by who? Teachers, so that they could go out and give you the information. Why Isaiah 53, who's going to believe our report speaking on Yahweh Shai to the law and to the testimony? They were speaking of him before he even came. Now us, I can't remember my past life, but I believe in the Son of Man. How can I prove to you he exists? Oh, I got to get his bones. I got to find his DNA. You had to be there. You got to have some type of record or somebody in your bloodline that met him to know that that's true. But then that takes away from faith. And what the Ruach HaKodesh is doing is moving men and women to study what's going on in these scriptures. If you don't understand, you're going to go to somebody that put in the experience to feed you this word. Because what a wise man will hear. This is what the people of Berea did. They had a readiness mind to hear. Right? Let's get St. John 6:45. Right? This is a basic lesson, but a lot of people think you just hop in the book of Matthew, and just because you might understand one chapter, you think you got it all. The Lord don't want us to be boasting in ourselves. That's why when you look at the thorn in Paul's side, that was his weakness, but for him to show that his dependence in Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. So St. John chapter 6, verse 45, it is written in the prophets, and they shall be all taught of the Most High. Every man, therefore, that have heard and have learned of the Father cometh unto me. How is we coming to Yahweh Shai to hear about the Father? Now the Lord is raising the prophets again, because the prophets had these things written by the scribes, and they prophesied. And in the time of Yahweh Shai, those apostles and disciples was rereading the law, Psalms, and the prophets and the Apocrypha to be able to give sense on what was written aforetime. And the Lord is doing it again, raising up prophets, but they're moved by the Spirit of Yahweh Shai. Now let's see. When we go to Galatians, the first chapter, a point that deals with Paul when he said he got the revelations, basically from Yahweh Shai, right? I don't know. Should I just read it in the KJV? Okay. It says, this is Galatians chapter 1 in verse 11. It says, But I certify you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached to me is not after man, right? When people say, oh, man wrote this whole thing is not by man. Of course, we have a carnal mind where we think that because it's written, it had to be copied. Yes. But if you truly believe in the spirit or a high power, that spirit moved these men to write it and prophesy it. Man's going to the Lord. Your words are developed from Yahweh, right? The words that you're going to say, how you move, right? Because literally the Lord is feeding what's in your heart, because wherever your heart is, that's where your treasure is. For I neither received it of man, neither was I taught it, but by the revelation of Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, right? For ye have heard of my conversation in time past in the Jews' religion, how that beyond measure I persecuted the church of the Most High and wasted it, right? He even speaking on himself, but he's letting you know through revelations, right? He was taught through Yahweh Shai, right? Let's see. In the NLT, I received my message from no human source, and no one taught me. Instead, I received it by direct revelation from Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, or from Yahweh Shai Mashiach. So he received all these words through the Spirit from Yahweh Shai, which actually fully gives you the example of St. John 14:26. Because the Ruach HaKodesh is going to give you remembrance of all things. One man, once a persecutor of the church, now defending it, and speaking boldly in the name of Hamashiach Yahushai. So, verse 14, and prophet in the Jews' religion above many my equals in my own nation, being more exceedingly zealous of the traditions of my fathers, which is the law and other things of the Pharisees. But when it pleased the Most High to separate me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace, Paul already had grace on him, but things had to be fulfilled. Then later on, Yahushua blinded him, getting him started, to reveal his son in me, that I might preach him among the heathen. Immediately I conferred not with flesh and blood. Paul, through the Spirit, when you look, he said he was compelled to teach the gospel, which compelled means he was forced to teach the gospel, right? So the Lord moves men to go teach this word, but the Lord moves you to go study the word, right? What is it? Let's get this. Why would these verses be in the scriptures? To study. Second Chronicles, the 15th chapter, verse 13. Whosoever don't seek the Most High shall be put to death, old or young, right? To seek, we have to investigate. We have to study, right? 2 Timothy 2:15, study to show thyself approved unto the Most High, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth, right? And the Lord set up men before some of us that get in to already do the heavy lifting, to study and breaking things down. So now when you hear them break these things, you're like, man, what the heck? Oh man, I didn't know that. Now they're giving you the precepts, you write it down, and you go look up these precepts and study, search these scriptures daily until you're persuaded that this is the truth or this is a lie. Let alone what makes it even better, when you heard one brother and then you heard another brother teaching the same thing, you're gonna be like, wow, he's saying the same thing as him. Guess what? Those are two witnesses, and they're in one mind. How much more can you learn? The more you keep listening and searching, you might hear this brother going to MOTB, this brother going over here in Revelation 6, and then a week later, that other brother is going over to MOTB, and this brother a week later going over Revelation 6. So if you watch both of these videos, regardless if the next week he's speaking on the same lesson the other brother did, and he's speaking on the same lesson that brother did, you're going to, since you have the skills of searching the scriptures, whether they were so, what makes it even better that two brothers are actually teaching the same thing. And that right there is the Spirit is going to give you confirmation like, yo, two or more witnesses are agreeing in this. It's order. Let alone if it wasn't order, you see these brothers correcting themselves on a certain point, right? In order to be a student or to study, you have to want to investigate. Like the movie Sherlock Holmes, he was an investigator. He was looking at certain signs or certain points in the wall, measurements on the ground, how people walk, or the smell in the air, to investigate a crime scene. Like when you watch the First 48, when you watch CSI Miami or New York or Law and Order, they are investigating either paperwork or the crime scene. We have to investigate the law, investigate the history from Joshua all the way to Chronicles, right? Then you have to investigate the major and minor prophets. Then you have to investigate the gospel. Then you have to investigate the letters of Paul. Then you have to investigate Revelations, right? You're investigating Second Maccabees, First Maccabees. You're investigating Esther, the prayer of Azariah, the letter of Jeremiah, the book of Baruch. You're investigating the wisdom of Sirach, the book of wisdom of Solomon, Tobit, Judith, right? First and Second Ezra. You're going to investigate these things and be persuaded. Because if whatever you're reading, you're not persuaded, you're not going to continue to read it. You're going to either debunk it, right? Go against it. But in order to debunk something, you have to study it. But even if you study on your own, who's to say you have the right understanding? Because the real sheep are going to go under men, right? Let's look at Yahushai in the book of Luke. Let's start at verse 41, just to give some context. He's a 12-year-old, right? And when we look at school, children, in order to get an education, they got to go to school, go to their classes, and it's a teacher. So then now, when they get older, the things that they learn, they can either become a teacher, but the things that they learn is going to help them depending on, the main thing is reading, But this is Luke 2:41. Now, when his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover, and when he was 12 years old, they went to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. And when they had fulfilled the days as they returned, the child Yahushua tarried behind in Jerusalem. And Joseph and Mary knew not of it, but they, opposing him to have been in the company, went a day's journey, and they sought him among their kinsfolk and acquaintance. And when they found him not, they turned back again to Jerusalem, seeking him. And it came to pass that after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, right? The doctors of the law, both hearing them and asking them questions, right? Well, that's a student, especially in college, where you're hearing the teacher teach, and then, a teacher might say, hey, do anybody have a question? Do you understand? And somebody raise their hand. Hey, professor, I have a question on, did Newton do this? Right? So Yahushua being 12, right? He's hearing the doctors of the law, right, bring forth what's going in the law or whatever test or whatever conversation they having. And then after he heard them, what is he doing? He's asking them questions in the law, right? But that's what a student would do, and the questions that you ask, it pertains to what you either learn or what you saw. You can't see something if you're not going to seek it. Verse 47, and all that heard him were amazed at his understanding and answers. So when you become a student, you grow in understanding. When you believe, truly believe, you have an answer, right? And now this goes. Is this the true answer? Is it sound doctrine? Is it 100% truth? And if it is, what does that go into? The Rakah Kodash has brought remembrance unto you. St. John 14:26. And now you're able to go teach the word of Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai. Now you're able to fully believe, right? But guess what? Us being in this flesh, you're always hearing the word of Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, right? Just because the screen might freeze, I'm going to bring out this one precept. It might freeze, so I don't want to take too long. So I'm going to just go to my Bible. When you go to Sirach Ecclesiasticus, the 6th chapter, verse 32 to 33, it says, my son, if thou wilt, thou shalt be taught. And if thou wilt apply thy mind, thou shalt be prudent. If thou love to hear, thou shalt receive understanding. And if thou bow thy ear, thou shalt be wise. Wisdom starts with humility, loving to hear and learn before speaking or teaching, right? Wisdom starts with humility, loving to hear and learn before speaking or teaching others. That's the mindset we have to have. You have to have that desire or love to hear. You got to have that heart, that mind to want to learn. Most of us don't want to learn, right? Some of us might want to hurry up and go be a teacher. Guess what? Even us brothers, before we do a lesson, we're going to meditate on most of the time on what we're going to bring out, or we go read a few scriptures or a chapter to be inspired, right? You might do your regular schedule of reading, or you might read some precepts that you already have. And you're like, hold on, should I go into this lesson? And you reading it, and then that understanding going to you, and the spirit might just draw you to go teach, right? But again, you have the love to hear and learn before speaking or teaching others. If you don't have love for learning, it should be the same for not having a love for teaching. But if you don't have the love of learning, how can you really be a believer? So this Proverbs 9:9, give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. So a true teacher was once a diligent student, increasing in learning through instruction, right? Apostle Tahar was a student. And guess what? He's a teacher. And even more, he's going searching even more, getting into certain etymology of words in the Hebrew and the Greek. He's still a student by growing, getting more information. But a true teacher was once a diligent student, increasing in learning through instruction. Proverbs 9:9. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. Right? What we said earlier, dealing with Sirach 6:32-33. Wisdom starts with humility, loving to hear and learn before speaking or teaching others. You have to love to learn, right? This is what children have to understand when it comes to education. In order to get these grades, even if, some of us, we don't care for the education, but literally you want to care, especially when it comes to learning about Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. You want to have that crave, that desire to learn. If you're not asking questions like Yahushai at 12, where he could be just playing, jumping around, he chose to ask questions about Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. He's eager. He has a delight in it. He's loving to hear because he's hearing them teach. Now that he heard them teach to get more wise and get more understanding, I'm going to ask a question and try to get understanding on this question. That's what students do, right? 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. In the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. That's a plain verse right there, right? In the NLT, let's see how it's worded. In the NLT, you have heard me teach things that have been confirmed by many reliable witnesses. Now teach these truths to others trustworthy. Now teach these truths to others trustworthy people who will be able to pass them on to others. That's all we're doing. We're just passing on the message, right? Like in school, I forgot what it's called. Is it called telephone? Where you tell one person one thing and then it goes throughout the whole room. And then at the end, the last person say, and you see if the same information got to that person. Some people might expound a little further and then words get twisted around. But this truth is supposed to stay the same. Let there be no division amongst you. So what is the prophets doing from old to now? Just keep giving the message as a domino effect, right? You're passing it on. Lord willing, the elect cleave to it. So Paul is teaching Timothy that before he can teach others, he must first receive instruction from those set over him. We have elders, men that's over us. For us to grow, we have to hear them and then hear other brothers, right? Your spirit be more on fire where I'm not only just listening to the apostles, I'm listening to the elders, and then I'm listening to other brothers, because that fire or a certain title or a video that a brother was going into, I needed to hear it, or I needed this understanding. And then I got attracted to the brother's teaching, but what everything he's doing is a message, understanding he was able to get through the scriptures to be able to make a lesson, okay? Especially when brothers are speaking on war, the digital currency, they might see a video, the things that they have learned, they're able to be skillful when it comes to bringing forth the words of the Lord. And that goes with, I think, Psalms 33:3. I believe. I could be incorrect. Yes, this is it. This is Psalms 33:3. Sing unto him a new song, play skillfully with a loud voice. That's all it is with each one of these lessons. You're becoming more skillful in your delivery, more skillful on precepts. Some of us was always bringing out these precepts. Now you're bringing out new ones. And then you bring out the new ones. Some of us might forget the classic ones. right? And they hit even more. And then now you doing compare translations to make the lesson even more edifying. So again, in order to believe, you must be taught. In order to teach, you must learn. But you have to love to learn. You have to learn to be taught. It's the same if you tell your child when they make a mistake and you're trying to teach them, hey, you got to do it this way. They got to have that love to want to learn. Like, oh, snap, that's what that's going into. Oh, okay, I'm going to take that and then move with it, you know, especially when you tell somebody what you don't like, your household or however, they're supposed to learn the things, what you don't like. I don't like people walking the house with shoes on. When you teach them, they know. But now when they apply it, that means they understood, okay, when we come in the house, let's take our shoes off. Now them doing it means they understand, let alone them doing it is respecting. But as a student, you supposed to hear what's being said and re-go over it, let alone what do they do in school? Pop-up quiz. So you want to always, whatever you're taught, you want to always overlook, like study it, go through it, to at least plant it in your mind, because your mind is like what we would call a chip or not a chip. Is collecting data, information, right? So in order for you to believe in something, you have to go read this information, study it constantly, so then your spirit can rest on it. Sometimes you might be in a tender bender where you might not understand a chapter. You pray unto Yahweh Bashem Yahushai to give you that spirit to understand. But again, soon as you're taught, then you look at what was taught. Now you understand, you believe. Now, if it's in that ability, you're going to be able to teach and be skillful with the Yahweh Shema Shai's word, right? So when we looked at St. John 14:26, that the Comforter, or which is the Rakakwadash, whom the Father will send in my name, he shall teach you all things and bring all things to your remembrance, whatsoever I have said unto you. Even Yahweh Shai's disciples were taught by the Rakakwadash, showing that learning never stops. The Spirit teaches, reminds, and builds the student up into a teacher. Because before Peter and them was speaking up to the Gentiles or teaching, Peter had to go through that Cornelius situation, right? And he couldn't understand it by the vision. And then when it was in front of him and they were saying what they were saying, now he's like, now I understand that vision I had. Then further on, the Lord raised up a persecutor of the ministry to come and be a faithful man of the ministry. Now you're fully persuaded to understand the being a light to the Gentiles. Guess what? The Spirit is giving you more understanding. Now, Paul is giving them the sense on, hey, this is why this is why Paul spoke the way he was, because the Lord was speaking through him in a different way, because he had a different mission. But that helped the other men, right? Because Peter, most of the other apostles was teaching to the circumcision, but that helped the Spirit to understand what this was about, what was actually prophesied through Isaiah and Jeremiah, right? So now I got to read another verse behind the scene, just because of the computer might freeze. Wisdom of Solomon, the 7th chapter, verse 15. It says, the Most High have granted me to speak as I would, and to conceive as it is meet for the things that are given me, because it is he that leadeth unto wisdom and directeth the wise. So all wisdom and teaching abilities come from Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, not from men's pride or intellect, right? When you read Wisdom of Solomon 10:21, right, that spirit of wisdom make the dumb eloquent, okay? So let's look at something we already read, but let's read it again. When you go to Luke chapter 2, verse 46 to 47, let's read this again about Yahushai. So Luke 2:46, it says, and it came to pass that after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers, right? And we already spoke about this earlier, right? He's hearing them as like the people of Berea. You got to hear what somebody is saying, right? Let's read in NLT. 3 days later, they finally discovered him in the temple, sitting among the religious teachers, listening to them and asking questions. Right? And it's the number one thing a lot of Jake. If you want to hurry up and rebuttal or rebuke what's being said, but don't take the time to just fully listen. Because if you got a question, let that be your second question, but get all the precepts that's pertaining to what brother's bringing out and just hold your peace, right? Because then you ask a question and this and this and that, and then now it's all confused and you're trying to cover every angle. When you are a student, don't get deep. Don't go deep. That's not the time for you to think. That's the time for you to just observe what somebody bringing out, use your ears, and stay focused and hear what somebody's saying. You calculate what was brought out, and then you go reread it even for yourself. Because what scriptures say, you got to get it today. If the Spirit really dealing with you, you're going to get it that day. You're going to strive to get it that day. Hey, some of us might not get it that day, the next day. Peter couldn't get that vision right away. He had to get the vision 3 times. Then when he seen Cornelius and them, he started to fully understand and be persuaded by the vision. So everybody different in this thing, but as a student, we all should come the same by hearing the conclusion and then going over on your free time, read all those precepts that came out, meditate on it. And if nothing's sparking, go pray on it. So the next verse, 47, the NLT, all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers, because the way that he was speaking is as he was eloquent, but that was the spirit of wisdom that was already in Yahushua to have that understanding. But we have to be students. These are examples for us. So even Yahushua before teaching sat and listened and asked questions. This shows humility and the other order of learning before teaching, because Yahushua ministry did not start when he was 12. It's when he was older. But those is example for every last one of us. And we're less than Yahushua. So we got to come in this thing to be taught. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. So Hebrews, the 5th chapter, verse 8 and 9. And it says, though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. And being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him. Right? So Yahushua learned obedience. Even he went through the process of learning, proving none are above instruction. Yahushua showed that. He had to come as a servant in this side, and we seeing him as a 12-year-old learner. Then the Bible just jumps to him being older. Imagine what else he was learning way before his ministry started, right? And he was a man. Even if he had the spirit, he still had to grow up learning to be the example for us, to be a teacher. For him to be a high priest has to teach, right? But he has to know what he's teaching. Yahushua is the word. So as a student, the number one thing you can do for yourself is be a student. Because how can you be a believer if you haven't become a student, right? Everybody want to hurry up and jump in the car, but never took the time to learn how to drive. Okay? That's why, on this side, you do your road test before you riding with somebody that got a license, and they telling you, hey, go here, go in this parking lot, and you trying to free ball, learning how to turn different lanes, how to U-turn, how to drive the speed limit. You're trying to learn those things. So then when you take the test, everything you have learned, you'll be able to replicate it in that driver's test. Now you got your license. That's the same for brothers. In order to become a teacher, you have to be a student, become a believer, and then now you have been persuaded, and now you understand. And then if you have that ability, the Lord is going to move you, and you're going to be teaching his word. Okay? Plain and simple. But outside of the teaching for men and women, in order for you to believe, you must be a student. Okay? That should make plain sense for you men and women. Right? So let's go to Matthew, the 28th chapter, in verse 19 and 20. This is a basic lesson, but this is very important because everybody, oh, I believe, and then they saying Jesus and all of this. You wasn't even a student in this thing, because in church, nobody is teaching all the way through the Bible, let alone you teach through the whole Bible. And then somebody tell you, did you read the Apocrypha? I didn't read that. So you didn't read the whole Bible, let alone do you understand it with all the precepts? Because this is a puzzle. Matthew 28:19. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and in the Son and in the Ruach HaKodesh, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen. So once you learned Yahushai's doctrine, which is the volume of the book or the word, you have authority to teach others, but only according to what was commanded, not according to your own wisdom. He already gave us the blueprint. You have to have faith in it. It's right here. When you go to 2 Ezra 15, 1 and 2, he had these words written on paper. The Lord already speaks and prophesied on it. Okay. We look at Revelations 10, right? Verse 8 to 11. He told John the Revelator to eat that roll. It's going to be sweet and it's going to be bitter. The sweet is the things that pertain to, the benefits that Yahweh Shemashai is going to give those that endure to the end, right? Let alone having wisdom, knowledge, understanding is one of those benefits. But the bitter part is the affliction, right? The tribulations, right? The troubles, the hardship that you have to deal with. And even knowing that it's going to be some hardheads that's not going to cleave and believe in Yahweh Shai, and they're going to be put to death, right? What he told Ezekiel, eat the roll, speaking about the word that was given to him. And then he said, write it in the book, right? Let's go to this, and then we're going to move on. Second Peter's chapter 1 and verse 19. This is a very important verse, right? Now, I might try to make it even more plain. I'm going to read 19 to 21 and read it in the NLT. It's going to be even more plain. All the scriptures that you're reading, you have to understand that these were inspired by Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, like it says in Timothy. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 19 to 21. Because of that experience, we have even greater confidence in the message proclaimed by the prophets. You must pay close attention to what they wrote. How can we pay close attention? Especially when you're reading and you don't get something, you go to somebody that already paid attention, that have the sense, and they're going to give you the sense. So now when you read now, you're like, oh man, sometimes I'm writing certain details in the scriptures because of a lesson, or a brother brought out that verse and he made a point, and that might help me to understand that verse even more. But it's information throughout these scriptures, for their words are like a lamp shining in a dark place. That dark place is this world. You're in a spiritual battle, right? Until the day dawns and Hamashiach, the morning star, shines in your hearts. Above all, you must realize that no prophecy in scripture ever came from the prophet's own understanding. It's not us. This is Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, or from human initiative. No, those prophets were moved by the Ruach HaKodesh. They spoke from God, right? So the things that are written, the things that were prophesied to have these things written, they were moved by Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai's Ruach HaKodesh. And the Heavenly Father spoke through them because the Ruach HaKodesh is of him. St. John 15, if you abide in me, I abide in you. The Lord is abiding in the prophets in the old and in this time. So brothers teaching now, the lessons they bring out, especially if it lines up with sound doctrine, 100% truth, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai is speaking through him. Oh, hey God, is that you speaking through me, through him? The Lord is not like what you watch in a movie, a fairy tale. Yes, this is me. Which Yahweh can do that. He doesn't have to prove a thing to you, but the elect is going to naturally believe, right? Naturally believe. Those that need all these signs and, Lord, show me that you speaking to him to know. The Spirit is going to bear witness to know that Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai has spoken unto you through those lessons. When you find yourself watching a video, you're like, oh man, I needed to hear this, man. Guess what? That was the spirit that drawed you today, that specific day, to go hear that lesson, right? I got to read another precept behind the scene. Sirach chapter 19 in verse 24 to 25. He that have small understanding and feareth Yah the Most High is better than one that have much wisdom and transgressive the law of the Most High. There is an equity, subtility, and the same is unjust. And there is one that turneth aside to make judgment appear, and there is a wise man that justifieth injustice, which is going into teaching requires both knowledge and obedience. A teacher must not only know the word, but live by it. And if you live by it, it shows that you believe, because you're not going to apply something in your life you don't believe in. Shalom to the brothers and sisters that's on the live. Yahweh Shem Shai Brakatah. So again, to the whole point of the title of this lesson, in order to believe, you must be taught. In order to teach, you must learn. You cannot just hop and believe and you've never been taught, right? Everybody should become a student in this thing. And it doesn't matter. Oh, I don't agree. I believe that that you don't have to wear a garment. I believe you can just wear a fringe shirt. But if you are a believer, you're going to hear the conclusion before you go against it, because let alone you have to put your mind in the time frame of when Moses spoke to them. Was he speaking to him in a future sense? No, that was in that time we wore garments. So in the sense of you hearing about fringes on a garment, on this side, you're going to think that you should be having a garment with fringes. We have to be honest. You initiated, since we don't wear garments in this time, let's wear t-shirts. But I can't tell a brother, brother, you going off. You don't got fringes on your shirt. You can't say that because the scripture said garment. So when you look at the etymology of that word, undergarment is an undergarment, but that verse said garment, right? So when we look and understand those things, when you grow in this understanding, the more you get the Lord's word. That's why when Timothy said Paul's writings, right, it's hard to wrestle for some, because some people don't want to be students, okay? So you cannot believe unless you were taught. You cannot teach unless you first learn. Even Yahushua learned obedience before teaching salvation. The Spirit continues to teach those who humble themselves. The goal of being taught is to then teach others the same truth. That's 2 Timothy 2:2. I got to read another behind the scene because this is an Apocrypha. This is Wisdom of Solomon, the 6th chapter, and verse 17 to 18. It says, the very true beginning of her is the desire of discipline. The care of discipline is love. To be a student, that is a form of discipline, because a student has to sit in a classroom and shut up. Because when we in class, everybody not out speaking over the teacher. Now you got some class clowns that might be having whole conversations on their phone, talking to teach like, hey, stop talking, pay attention. In order for you to learn, you have to be able to use your two ears to receive what is being said. That's discipline. It says, and love is the keeping of her laws, and the giving heed unto her laws is the assurance of incorruption. And incorruption maketh us near unto the Most High. Therefore, the desire of wisdom bringeth to a kingdom. Hey, the more you want the kingdom, the more you're going to desire wisdom. And most of the time is you being a student, learning, forever learning. So to believe and teach rightly, you must love discipline. That's the path of every true servant of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. So, Lord willing, this is edifying. It was edifying to me, because I truly understand that, the spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua would never dwell in a, what is it? Let me see. The spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, or the spirit of wisdom, it would never dwell in a defiled thing, right? A profane vessel right? Or malicious soul. The spirit of the Lord is very pure and is a moving motion. And that spirit comes from the Father. So you have to know that same spirit, know your heart. It's not going to dwell in a damn wicked demon, right? So, Lord willing, this is edifying. I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to the one true power, Yahweh, Bashim Yahushai, Bashim Rakakodash. The honors to the elder apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well through the Spirit. Almighty Shalom to the hopeful elect in the same spirit and the sound doctrine. Lord willing, they continue. Shalom to the Akwaf, the sisters of his faith. Lord willing, you continue to pursue your lot, being a loving and silent and virtuous wife. And Lord willing, Yahweh Shemel Shai has mercy on the other brothers and sisters that's not in the faith. With that, I'm going to say Shalom, Shalom, Abba Ball.